My name is Stephanie Grader. I am the HMIS team lead. Um, I'll go ahead and get started here.
Today's agenda, what we'll be going over today is some webinar reminders, some announcements, and then we'll have a quick little training on the difference between prior living situation and current living situation.
Okay. You again.
Okay, and then same as always, just share any relevant information that you've learned here today with your staff. For any questions, please use the Q&A function. Attendance will be collected at the end of this session by a survey that will pop up. And then the webinar recordings and notes will be sent out a day. We pushed it a day out, so Tuesday, July 7th. And the deadline to complete that video and quiz will be Monday, July 13th.
All right, so we just have a couple announcements for you. So coming up is the biannual data quality check going on, and we will talk a little bit about it later on in the webinar. And then we will also, there's also the ongoing vendor transition, which we will also talk about in just a bit. And then the MAG and BOS released PIT HIC report will also kind of show a little bit of that today. Um, and those are our announcements.
Okay, sweet. So these announcements are going to be long announcements, but here we are. So we've done a biennial DQ check in the past. It's specified for Maricopa County, and we also do it for Balance of State. We did a couple of years ago. Last year, the COC board approved it to be put in a dashboard, but with information de-identified. So instead of sending 1,000 spreadsheets, it'll be in a dashboard. And I'll share what that looks like in a minute. But the dashboard reviews a few different items. It reviews timeliness, head of household errors, and utilization. What we'll do is we'll release the dashboard on July 13th. It'll be public. And at that point, we will be emailing agencies a list of IDs that are associated with their agency. It'll be a masked ID, which we'll see in a moment. This list will be sent to the point of contacts, and hopefully it'll distribute that information to the relevant people and the relevant programs and so forth. The idea is that we do ask agencies to review this information. We will have guidance on what reports the information is based on and how to correct data errors as well, especially for those head of household errors. And at that point, we'll rerun the report in 30 days, update the dashboard, and see if there's any improvements throughout the continuums. Again, this will be for both Maricopa County as well as Balance of State. The source information for the dashboard is from reporting in SAP, and those are available currently, but we will send out detailed information when we send out a final announcement. This should be a pretty low stress ask. In terms of utilization, head of household errors, and timeliness, most agencies are pretty good and pretty solid on that, but this is an opportunity to pinpoint those pieces that really affect federal reporting specifically. So for the LSA, head of household errors really come up quite a bit, and for utilization, beds versus client served, that comes up for the PIT, the HIC, as well as the LSA quite a bit. And so this is our attempt just to really strengthen that muscle, to make sure that the dashboard makes sense, to see where your input is on the dashboard as well. So there's not going to be any, quite honestly, a stick involved in this in terms of like really hunting people down, but we do want agencies to review it, and we'll send a feedback survey afterwards to see what worked, what didn't work, and if it's helpful. So I'm going to pull up that dashboard now, and then we'll just see what it looks. It is still being polished a little bit, but generally it looks okay. With how much stuff it has up. You should see a tab that says timeliness. So the first metric is just looking at timeliness, and the red bar is sort of a metric for 3 days. And that's for ES and shelters and so forth. So we do need to update that so it accommodates different project types, but this is basically what you'll be reviewing. So the first tab is timeliness. The masked ID, as noted, is not the actual ID in HMIS. So you will get a list of the actual projects and the associated masked ID, but then you can go and look at this and see, okay, my project 39 has an average length of time between entry and actually entering the data of almost 30 days. So that is the time between your client comes to the project on May 1st, but you don't actually enter the data into HMIS until May 28th. That'd be a 28-day period. And the more timely we are in entering data, the better it is. And this is one of the expectations that the COC has set. The second, let me just reload this because that is not helpful. The second metric that we have is head of household errors. So this is counting the number of errors that you have in terms of head of household. So every enrollment has to have one head of household and only one head of household. So if you only serve single individuals, if the client is missing their head of household status or listed as a child or a spouse instead, that'll trigger an error. For families or multi-person households, so that could include adult only, so just like a couple or a couple of brothers or something of that sort, only one person could be designated the head of household. So an error will trigger if there's more than one head of household or no head of households. But you'd again go to your project ID, so I'm 53. And in terms of multi-person households, I see that there are one entry exit that has a household error. And in this case, it covers 3 people. So it's a family of 3, but the whole enrollment has an error. And for the same project here, I'd hover here and it shows for this project, I have 2 individuals enrolled by themselves who have head of household errors. That means that head of household status is not present, or it's incorrect, like it's child only, which cannot be the case in a single enrollment. You might find situations where you do see that this single enrollment is a child who is 4 years old and never got exited. The solution there would be to exit the client appropriately. But that's the next thing on this dashboard that we're looking at.
Hi,
The
Sam,
next two,
there's a comment,
yeah.
actually, that somebody sees a black screen. I'm able to see it on my side, what you're sharing. Just want to give you that information.
Okay. Is anyone else struggling with seeing a black screen?
I can see your screen that you're sharing.
Okay. We do record this, so the recording will capture this information. I'm not quite sure why, but let me go ahead and I will.
Everyone else is saying they can see it.
Oh. Okay, well, let's note that and we'll follow up, and then we can follow up with that individual just to make sure that they have the information before July 13th if need be. The next 2 tabs just look at utilization. So one is for rapid housing specifically, and one is for every other project type that provides housing and or shelter. So this one here is looking at utilization. So basically green means that your beds are mostly filled, not overfilled or underfilled, they're generally filled. Yellow means your beds are underfilled. So if you have 100 beds, but only 50 are occupied, it'll show up as yellow. And red shows a high utilization. So this says, well, you have 100 beds, but you reported having 300 people in shelter that night. Why are there so many extra people in beds when you only have 100 available? And so those colors generally mean. There's also a gray here as well, which means it's not operating. So it means we have no information. But you'll see this often if a project, and this is broken down by quarter. So the first quarter is June 1st last year to August 31st. And each quarter is a representation of how many clients were in the project. If you go ahead and click over this, it hovers or hovered over it. It'll show information. It'll show any beds we've reported, as well as the number of clients served.
And Sam,
as
we
a
have
note,
actually a question in the chat too,
oh
that
yeah,
might be
of course.
helpful. Will we be able to see the HMIS IDs for the entries with errors from the dashboard, or will we have to go back and run an error report to get that information?
You have to go back and run an error report to get that information. We could theoretically put those client IDs into the dashboard. That was not approved the last time we reviewed this with the COC board. So it is running the report to see the associated errors. But that is an excellent question. And then just back to that tooltip here, it just shows basically total beds, clients served. So in this project, in that quarter, there was 48 beds available on average per night. And on average, there was 31 clients served per night. As a note, for permanent housing projects, rapid, other permanent housing, and PSH, that client served is only clients who are housed and have a housing move-in date. It's not all clients enrolled, it's only those who are actually housed. For shelters, safe havens, and transitional housing projects, it is the number of clients who are being served. And so our ask here is just to review this and see if it makes sense. If you're project 18 and it's green across the board and these numbers all make sense, about 92 beds and 87 clients served, good to go. But if you're project 30 and you see that we have 10 beds recorded, but you're always serving around 20 clients, we might have a problem with the information that we are recording, and maybe your project really has 20 beds. At that point, you can reach out to us and we can correct that information. But we can see in 61, it starts with yellow and goes to green. So this may be a new project that was just opening, and this might be correct. As you're reviewing this, go ahead and send us questions through the ticketing portal. But our goal is to really make sure that this is an accurate reflection of the work that everyone is doing. So that's most projects except for rapid rehousing projects. Rapid rehousing projects is done slightly differently since the beds are a little more are not clear cut. So this just lists the number of clients that were housed on average per night. So for this project here, between June 1st and August 31st in 2025, on average, they served 143 clients per night. And we would just ask, does this make sense? So this project here, this masked ID, they served 129 the first quarter and 39 the last quarter. They may be running out of funding for the year. They may be waiting on new funding. They may be closing. We don't know on our side of the HMIS team, but if you review this and this looks correct, excellent to know. If it looks incorrect, then that's just a trigger that there's something wrong with the data entry, or the data reporting. And that's really important for us to know so that when we do communicate stuff, especially in federal reports, that we're communicating accurate information. You'll see other information like this. This just means the project probably had not started operating yet, and they're just ramping up. And the colors also highlight based on, the higher number. So 92 is a little darker, so indicates it's a much higher number than the lighter number 0 here. So, but that is the dashboard. Again, it's pretty informal. This is a tool that we want the community to use to sort of review the data at a high level. And then we'll rerun this in about 30 days, get some feedback, and see how we can improve this in the future. So I'll pause real quick for any questions.
Sam, there is a question. How or when do we get access to the dashboard?
We are going to publish the dashboard on July 13th. And at that point, we will send a link to the dashboard, as well as the masked IDs to all point of contacts. And that will be coming out that day. I think that's a Monday. Yep, Monday, July 13th. The next piece is hopefully everyone's heard of by now, but we do have a vendor transition coming up. We are switching softwares from WellSky to a vendor called Green River, and our HMIS is called OpenPath. So Maricopa, as well as Balance of State, have both signed their contracts with Green River. So it is official, and there is no going back at this point. Right now, Maricopa is looking to transition users in early October 2026, and Balance of State will be transitioning users in late November and early December 2026. So you're gonna get a lot of information over the next 3 months for Maricopa and the next 5 months for Balance of State about what is happening. For those users who also happen to operate in Pima, or agencies that also happen to operate in Pima County, they're looking for a tentative transition date in January 2027, but I do not believe they've completed their contract with the new vendor yet. We are sending out various emails and other information to all sorts of individuals to gather as much data as we need. One of the things that we're asking users that we send out to point of contacts and agency admins is to complete the HMIS vendor transition catalog survey. I'm going to share that real quick as well. But this is our attempt to get as much information as possible so that when we do transition, you have everything you need right off the bat. So it's a pretty straightforward survey. And it should be pulling up SurveyMonkey with HMIS vendor transition catalog at the top. Is anybody able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the first part, just general information, that shouldn't be too new, but what we're really looking for is that your agencies list any workflows you use in HMIS. So there's some obvious ones that will transfer over: emergency shelter, SSVF, RI, HOPWA, PATH. But there are lots of other workflows that you may use in your agency or as a community that are not HUD required or required by other federal agencies. This could be heat relief, this could be move on, this could be, SPL, but whatever, any workflow that you have that is important for the operations of your organization, we want to know and we need to know. So we make sure that your operations not interrupted when we transition vendors in October for Maricopa and in the late fall for Balance Estate. In addition, we do ask that agency list any custom assessments that they are currently using. We will pull all assessments from the system, but because we have a list of assessments doesn't mean we understand how important or how used they are. So we want to make sure that agencies go ahead and list the assessments that are really critical, again, for their operations, what they use on a daily basis, and the information that they need. The other one is listing any community tools or resources your agency uses in HMIS. In this case, always err on the side of caution. So if you think, well, I don't know if there's a workflow, not include it. We want to know. And this could be, community tools could be case conferencing notes, client notes, case manager lists, anything you could think of that helps you operationally day to day, week to week, month to month in HMIS. Again, we are being very intentional about getting as much information as possible so we can sort of prioritize getting this information and getting the new system ready as soon as possible. The last one we're asking for is listing any SAP reports that your agency uses on a regular basis. The canned reports like the COC APR and the ESG CAPR, those will be available in the new system by default. Those are HUD required, and they have a whole suite of actually very nice reports that they have available for users. But we do have in SAP a ton of custom reports. And we have custom reports for, CDBG funding and ESG funding and local funding, heat relief. And it's going to be really important for us to know what those reports are and even how often you use them. There are literally thousands of reports in the system in SAP, and the vast majority never get touched. Some are a decade old and haven't been seen in years and years and years. What we want to know is, for your operations, what reports do you use and which ones do we need to focus on recreating and making a timeline on how to make those reports operational in the new system. So at your earliest convenience, we're sending this out in the notes. We'll also be sending out a mail blast as well. And we're going to make sure that agencies have the ability to communicate everything that is critical and important to them so that we make sure that's available in the new system. I'll stop that there. And then, are there any questions on that request?
There is a question, Sapo, this will include any agency-specific reports, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We want to know about that as well. We do not know what the capacity is, so it may be a situation where some reports are available go live date in October, and some are available a month later on the beginning of November. And that really depends on the need. So if reports run on a quarterly basis, you may not need it until November. But we 100% want you to include agency-specific reports. Yes. Okay, that's all I have for vendor transition. Well, actually, I lied. I have one more piece about vendor transition. So the one piece for Maricopa County is that we do have a customization freeze on new data elements starting July 10th. This is in order to make sure that the underlying database doesn't change significantly between when we end our contract with WellSky officially and the go live date. This will make data migration easier, and we'll make sure that as the new vendor is planning and setting up things for all projects in the system or all agencies in the system, that nothing goes haywire. So for Maricopa County specifically, we are requesting that all customizations come in before Friday, as I assume many of you probably have Friday off, and that the HMIS team will complete those customizations by July 10th. What this means is that at that point, for Maricopa County, there won't be new assessments, new assessment questions, modifying assessments, or shelter list modifications. The shelter list modification one, I'm going to get additional clarification on. That might be okay in some situations, but really we're focused on the assessments. Now, other things are unaffected. Data entry, no problem. New projects, no problem. Normal day-to-day work, client notes, everything else in existence is totally fine to work on. So your normal day-to-day work is not affected, but it is the customizations, the new assessments, new questions that are being put on pause.
And
If
Sam,
you have any,
we do have a question
oh
too.
yeah,
Curtis created a report for SSVF. I want to make sure I can access it with a new vendor.
yeah, absolutely. And as long as we get that captured in that transition catalog survey, that makes a ton of sense. We'll make sure we can prioritize that for the new vendor. Balance of State will also face the same customization freeze, but theirs will be later on since they're transitioning in November, December of the fall. And that customization freeze will come in late August. This is a rather short timeline, so I do truly sincerely apologize to the Maricopa users, especially the admins and point of contacts, that this notice was so short. Balance Today will have much more notice, but it took us a minute longer to prepare and get that contract signed than we anticipated. So if you have any questions or concerns, please submit a ticket to the help desk. Feel free to reach out to me as well. And we'll keep on communicating this over the next few weeks. But I think that is all I had on the vendor pieces.
We have one more slide.
Oh yes. And then just thank you to everybody here. So there's a ton of information being presented here. We spend months and months and months starting in November working in LSA, SPMs, PIT-HIC. Some of you, everyone who has any sort of bed hears from us during the PIT-HIC process. And a lot of you also hear from us during the LSA and the SPM process as well. Like 100%, like we very sincerely believe on the HMIS team that we could not do our jobs, that we could not be successful in federal reporting without, the graciousness and willingness of agencies to work with us. I'm always very impressed and amazed at how often we reach out to agencies. I know you have your own day-to-day activities, you have your own funding requirements and everything of that sort. And the responsiveness and willingness to work with us as a team is just, overwhelming. And so 100%, we could not possibly do the work that we do, or even do a vendor transition or any of this stuff without the support of agencies. And you already have a lot on your plate. So when it comes to federal reporting, we really, really do appreciate your input. And that's why we send out the survey as well. And that input does really impact the way we do things in the future. These links are not going to be, I'm not going to pull them up right now. And we can include these links in the notes. We can take a screenshot if you want, and then type it out manually, I guess, which is super inconvenient. But both MAG and Balance of State release their PIT-HIC reports. So if you're interested in that data and want to take a look, those are available for both MAG and Balance of State.
So any questions? We'll just pause for a moment. Okay, I don't see any questions coming through, so we'll just go to our next slide. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do just a brief review on these HMIS data elements, the 1.917 prior living situation, and then 1.12 current living situation. I'm planning on doing a deeper dive into both of these elements. So again, this is just a brief overview we're doing for today. So we'll start with 3.917 prior living situation. So this is a universal data element, and it is collected for heads of households and adults. It is applicable to all HMIS project types, but it's actually split into two data elements. So we have 1.917A and then 1.917B. That should be a B, not 8, sorry. But A is applicable to the emergency shelters, street outreach, and safe havens. And then B is applicable to all other project types. And then this data element is collected at project start. And the data element identifies the type of living situation and length of stay in that situation immediately prior to the project start for all adults and heads of households. This data element and others are used to identify whether a client appears to meet the criteria for experiencing chronic homelessness. And then moving on to data element 4.12, current living situation. So this one is a program data element, or PDE. It is collected for the heads of households and adults. It is applicable to emergency shelter night by night, street outreach and supportive services only projects, and coordinated entry HMIS prototypes. It is collected at each time of contact for clients, and this data element reports each contact with people experiencing homelessness by street outreach and other projects. It provides information on the number of contacts required to engage a client, as well as to document a current living situation each time the client is contacted. So again, it is just a brief overview for today, but I am planning on going into deeper dives for these data elements. So we'll go ahead and pause for any questions we have. I don't see any right now. And these are our future dates for the AAW, just for your information, so you guys can plan accordingly. And then again, if there's questions, please put them in the Q&A. But thank you all for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Again, we'll go ahead and just stick around if there are any questions. But please also complete the survey at the end of the webinar to record your attendance here. And then,
Stephanie, there was a question in the chat. Prior living situation is where they spent the night before the project entry.
yes, that is a great way to think about it. Yes, the night before. Where did they stay at last night?
Thank you. I hope you all have a great 4th of July as well and a safe weekend.